and Bob Rant on another glorious Melbourne day with me and my crazy sidekick. Here he is, down at my side, my crazy sidekick JJ. 2 days in a row we've got on. As I said yesterday, school holidays time is good for me because I do a lot of work with the juniors in sports. So during school terms, it gets pretty busy. During school holidays, it calms down a bit. So I can get on a little bit more. So it's been a very hectic year, getting busy with the end of financial years, just trying to get all my books up to date, got to get all my taxes sorted. God knows where I am I run a small company, a very small company. It was a business, but I converted to a company because I want to try and get some investors on board with the project I'm doing. So I need to give them some equity. So it just makes it all a bit more complex. And of course, with all the tax changes Albo and his dickhead mate Jim have introduced, just make it all a bit more things. So busy times at my end. But here we are back on again. So we'll give you a quick look at the Melbourne weather as we go. And there it is, Port Phillip Bay. It's a bit better than yesterday. Still a lot of cloud cover, but there's bits of blue in the sky, a bit more breezy than yesterday, but nowhere near the rain. So, it looks, from Melbourne Winter's Day, probably as best you could hope. Last night was bloody freezing. So hopefully they're getting some snow up in their heels for the skiers. And we want the businesses up there to flourish. We want all businesses to flourish. Because businesses, small businesses like mine, are the engine room of any economy. And yet our governments don't seem to understand that. I'll get into that in a minute. Better get my Bible read done first. As I said yesterday, I've given up and trying to catch up. Whatever day I get on, I'll just go through that. Yesterday was a good one. Today's is a good one. The final judgment. Oh, God, I don't like reading about this. Matthew 25, 31 through 46. Acting in love towards people in need, especially those whom the world neglects, has the direct and personal backing of Jesus Christ himself. Geez, that's interesting, isn't it? So, acting in love towards people in need, especially those whom the world neglects, has the direct and personal backing of Jesus Christ himself. To be a Christian it really tests your soul, doesn't it? It provides you with a lot of contradictions. So I'll give you an example just on that one quote alone. There's a lot of people that are Australia first that are talking about deportations and all that. And that includes, they're talking about millions must go. And Scott Challen, yet again, mate, I know you watch, I know you read from time to time my stuff. Love to get you on and clarify this. And look, Scott is a Christian, or tells me he's a Christian, so I'll take him at his word. And his last rally even baptized himself. I don't think that was actually a baptism. I think he was, I forget the word for it, but he was using that as a way to say that Australia has to get reborn like a born-again Christian. I think. Don't know unless I can get him on and clarify it all. But for all those that are, part of the NSN or the Groupers or whatever you want to want, basically everyone is against mass immigration, wants us to turn back to a white Australia only sort of policy, deport everyone who doesn't equal that and all that. But they also claim to be Christian. Yet if you're a Christian, you've got to, and I said this yesterday, and I'll keep saying it, I'm a poor Christian. I try to do my best. But there's so many better Christians than me out there. There's a lot worse Christians than me, by the way, out there as too. Well, but if you're a Christian, and I lean towards a lot of that, not towards all the bend. I believe we've got to keep our own culture. I'm a believer in immigration, but it's got to be the right immigration. And should we be taking in refugees? That's interesting. What's a legitimate refugee? So, yes, I do think we should be taking in refugees, people who are genuinely, that's the key word, trying to escape authoritarianism, trials, persecution, potential murder or execution. This is what they're talking about. So especially those whom the world neglects. So, for example, Nigerian Christians who are getting slaughtered, should we be taking them in? We had this debate, and I'm hoping to get the Big J group together, the four of us, and we had this big debate with Ben from Australian Talks. He would say no. I, as a Christian, said you have to. And I'm glad to see that in the Bible there's a verse there that it says exactly that. So it does bring up a lot of contradictions. And I think people like Ben have got a good heart. I actually do believe there's a lot of people that might have these things because the governments have forced us into a position where we look at every immigrant and we look at every refugee and think they're not compatible with what we want. But a lot of them, I know a few, I know quite a few that have come to Australia and they've come for the Australian way of life, not for their own way of life. They're actually, a lot of them, more Aussie than what plenty of white Aussies are. They will happily wave the flag, embrace small business, maintain their faith, do a lot of the things that are traditional Australian values. More so, they'll celebrate Australia Day. So, and they will look into our history. They really will. I've had conversations with immigrants and their kids and all that about Australian history. And when they find out about it, they want to learn more. So, because when they go through our education system, they're never taught any of this. Thankfully, I went through the education system when it was still a legitimate Australian education system. We got taught about Australian history, Western civilization, and all that. Kids, probably since this century, don't get taught about it. We've got a couple of generations now have never been given the proper history of Australia. And it's all been twisted and turned. And a lot of the stuff that we were brought up with, they've never learnt. And that amplify that for children of immigrant families. So anyway, that clearly states there, acting in love towards people in need, especially those whom the world neglects, has the direct and personal backing of Jesus Christ himself. There's no if, buts, or maybes there. Let's continue. When the Son of Man comes as king and all the angels with him, he will sit on his royal throne and the people of the nations will be gathered before him. Then he will divide them into two groups, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. I've read this, so I know where this is going. He will put the righteous people on his right and the others on his left. Then the king will say to the people on his right, "Come you that are blessed by my Father, come and possess the kingdom which has been prepared for you ever since the creation of the world. I was hungry and you fed me, thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you received me in your homes, naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you took care of me, and in prison you visited me." The righteous will then answer him, "When, Lord, did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we ever see you a stranger and welcome you in our homes, or naked and clothe you? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you, whenever you did this for one of the least important of these brothers of mine, you did it for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Away from me, you that are under God's curse, away to the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, but you would not feed me, thirsty, but you would not give me a drink. I was a stranger, but you would not welcome me in your homes. Naked, but you would not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, but you would not take care of me." Then they will answer him, "When, Lord, did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and would not help you?" The king will reply, "I tell you, whenever you refuse to help one of these least important ones, you refuse to help me. These then will be sent off to eternal punishment, but the righteous will go to eternal life." And if you read that properly, like, for example, I don't know that I've done enough for that. So maybe I got a bit of catching up to do. I think I've been, well, here's a problem. I think I've been a lot better than others in that regard, but I haven't been as good as some as well. And, where does God's judgment land? Where does it land in that middle in what you've done? So, for example, there was a homeless girl. Well, at least I thought she was homeless. She was out, when they were at the front of Coles, and what attracted me, she had a dog. So, I love dogs. So I offered to buy her some food for a dog. This is where I might let myself down. I'm not particularly sympathetic to people who beg in front of Coles, because in Australia, I've been homeless. I never begged and never borrowed, but I could do something about it. I could be on Centrelink. I never begged. I lived out of the back of my car. First time for 3 months, time before that for about 6 weeks. And there's always ways and means that you can actually present yourself without appearing homeless, actually. There's ways and means that you can go get a shower, have a shave, get some income, still get fed, not having to rely on begging. In fact, it can save money because you're not paying rent, you're not paying power bills, you're not doing any of that. You're saving an awful lot of money. You're probably saving $2,000 a month at least, just on rent if you're renting. And then you put the power bills, the internet bills, all that in there. So, you do save. So in a country like Australia, there is no real need unless you're spending it all on drugs and, all that. And then that sort of goes on yourself. And what do you do there? If you give some person money, are you actually enabling their drug habit? And this is the problem with the move on orders, getting rid of them. The police should be empowered to get these people who are homeless on our streets, to get them off our streets and get them someplace where they can get some help. Begging, it used to be illegal. It should be again. And not for people who are begging that they can be sent to prison, but just so they can get taken off the streets and the police can get them to some help, some people who can help them, whether it's the Salvos or whether it's a government organisation that can help get these people back on their feet. Now, it's a hard job for a lot of them. I haven't given up the potential of me being homeless again. I mean, my business, if it doesn't work out, there's every potential that could happen again. You've got to be prepared to help. And this day, like, there was a girl, she had the dog, I offered to pay the thing. She goes, oh, no, actually, if you really want to help me, I could do with a lift. At that point, I was regretting offering help a little bit. I was going to give her $50 for the, which is something I never do. And this sort of turned me off. And the lift was to a housing commission flat. So this girl wasn't homeless at all. She was just out the front. She had all her kit there, had the dog, all this sort of shit. She was just looking for some transport. She didn't want to pay for a cab. And I've gone, well, there you go. Bite the hand that feeds you. But look, I'd offered, so I helped her and got her in there. And she had the foulest mouth on her. And the way she spoke to a dog, I felt for the poor old dog in the back of my car. I actually told her off at one stage. And I said, I actually said to her, were you using that dog to get some sympathy at the thing for a lift? She goes, oh, no, not really. Well, maybe a little bit. And I've gone, hon, when you've got a dog, a pet, you've got responsibilities like when you have a child. So I gave her a bit of an old man lecture, which she didn't appreciate. But no, I gave her a hand. I dropped her off, and she had all her baggage, all that. But she wasn't homeless. But she was making herself out to be homeless. So, I mean, it's a little harder in this world to know who you're legitimately helping, which has probably stopped me in the past. I'll hope to do it again. And I'd like to do more, but financially I'm not capable. I'm struggling to keep myself in the home and pay my bills. But I do what I can to help people out. If I get asked to give someone a hand, I'll help them, But I'd rather it come directly from them. And hopefully if my business does become successful, I can help out more people. So we'll see. And people have got to help themselves. I had an event all organised, a reunion, and we were going to put money into a charity for male suicide. Just got no support whatsoever, which was disappointing because I was approaching a lot of people who had the funds to come out, have a good night, we'd have some music, do a dinner dance, old ballroom style. People didn't want to come out in the cold of night. So, and the reason I did that is I've had 5 friends who've committed suicide. So I wanted to do something towards that, but just didn't get any traction. So we live in a world where it's pretty difficult to do a lot of good things. So I probably need to explore myself, some other things I do. But look, in my own life, I give up a lot of what I could have done as a career to help juniors in the sport. So hopefully, for example, that counts. And, there's been a few years ago, I paid for the fees of some boys just so they could play basketball because their parents weren't going to pay it. Don't know whether they could afford it, but my business covered them so they could play. They were good kids. 2 of them are Islamic. And one of the boys was a Jew. They were fine. The Jewish and the Asian people always pay. They're no problem at all. The kids from the tougher bracket, and one of the boys I covered He came across, for example, as a refugee on one of the boats back in the Abbott era. And he gave me the story of their trip across their boat. His dad actually had to kill a person because that person was going to throw his daughter overboard because he's worried about the boat capsizing. It was a small boat. So his dad, who knew some martial arts, he wasn't going to allow, obviously, his daughter to be thrown overboard. This guy who was running the boat or something, I can't remember quite the story, he was insistent that some people had to go on because she was, I don't know why they picked her, but she was his sister, and he was insistent. So apparently his dad had to kill this guy to save his daughter. So quite harrowing, and they had to go to Christmas Island before coming at it. His story about Christmas Island was interesting because, the media pumped it out like it was this big concentration camp. Well, this kid told me, no, Christmas Island was great. Free food, free accommodation, TV, channels, internet. He said it was their best place. And he said once they would then had to come out to different places around Australia. And they're now locked up around Springvale area. And he said, Bob, it's now hard work. He said the government used to pay for everything. Now they pay a little bit, but, which is getting the right thing. Got to go get a job. And he's a good kid. He's now working. He got his apprenticeship. He finished school. He's an Islamic kid, but he had a fear of dogs until he met JJ. Now he's got 2 of his own huskies. So we've Aussified him. He's embraced Aussie culture. So he was a good kid, as were all those boys. And they were rough and ready. So, but, I did the right thing. I coached them for a couple of years, didn't charge them. My business covered their fees. There were some other stories I won't share because they were pretty bad. So hopefully, when we get the chance like that, I did some good. So hopefully out of that verse, geez, that's taken a bit longer. I'm not evangelizing, I'm just giving stories, but I think we all can do a little bit more good. And especially when you read that, we probably all need to do a little bit more good. I need to go to church a little bit more. I need to go to confession a little bit more. I need to, I know, what was his name? Jordan Ditloff. I've got to know Jordan quite well over the journey. I've got to get him back on, actually. And I know he goes to prisons to visit inmates. I've got to see him. I'd love to actually help him out with that program if he's still doing it. Because people do go to prison, and some for major crimes, some for minor crimes. But, you got to, we all have a pretty black and white judgment on people who commit crimes. But, yeah, what's the old saying? But there for the grace of God goes I. So do these people go into prison and get time to reflect and look to change? Don't know. But, Jesus is telling us clearly in that verse that we should look to go and visit people in prisons and maybe do some work on the major holidays, when they have their Christmas lunches for the homeless, all that sort of thing. Do some more things on that. Maybe that's just reading that verse. Maybe that's something I've got to look at. And those of us who can help out need to look at. So anyway, we all have our own battles to go. So my rant today is Julie Inman Grant. It's actually Julie Inman Grant. And I'm going to cop some flack on this because last time I raised it, I copped some flack. But this whole Royal Commission into anti-Semitism, the Jewish leadership in Australia. Now, I've got good friends in the Jewish community. I've worked within the Jewish community. I've backed the Jewish community, particularly in Australia. I don't know a lot about the Jewish community in Israel. I think they get a pretty hard go of it sometimes. They've got 58 Muslim countries surrounding them with I don't know how many millions of people. And they're one small, tiny little country of 10 million. And everyone wants to just destroy them. So there's this grudging side of me that says, whatever you think of them, give them some respect. They're still standing strong despite nearly, 75 years of countries wanting to push them back into the river and the sea and all this sort of shit and the world being opposed, and they still stand strong. I can respect that. That part I can respect. I don't know enough about the history, and all those ones proclaiming that they do, I don't think they'd know enough. If you live in Australia, you don't know all the ins and outs of what goes on between Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Turkey, Lebanon. You just don't know. And when I work within the Jewish community here, and a lot of them do travel to Israel and back, they've got family there. And the one thing that woke me up is, and this is going back just after October 7th, I was working in their basketball club, coaching one of their teams, and the team manager came, we got talking about it quite a lot, naturally. And she showed me a phone. She had an app on her phone, and every person in Israel has this app on their phone. And it's a warning system. It's a warning system where their defense administration detects missiles flying into their country, and you've got to go find a shelter. They get an alarm on their app. And she showed me one part on how many alarms I'd had in the time in SA, and it was littered with alarms. And this is when Hezbollah and Hamas were firing missiles into Israel. So we can't comprehend that. You know, you're walking down, your phone's there, bang, alarm go, oh shit, I've got to find a shelter, or I'm going to have a bomb drop on my head. You know, we have no comprehension of that here in Australia. And what are they supposed to do? Just keep allowing the bombs to drop on them? Allow the terrorists to walk into a cafe and blow everyone up? You know, if we're in their position, don't tell me if October 7th happened to Australia to the same degree, and you've got to multiply that we wouldn't be looking for a vengeance. Don't tell me if anybody dared do that to the Americans, that they wouldn't be looking to wipe that country off the face of the earth. So, you know, all this bullshit and the protests and the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens, and of course they're going to lobby other governments. They feel like they've got the world against them. It's for them, not for us. For them, it's a matter of survival. You know, we're all bitching about Muslim immigration because it's happened in this last 2 decades, you know, since probably 2010 onwards, I'd say, probably for the last 15 years. Israelis have been living that with people on their borders their entire history. Israel's had it since it was established 75 years ago. But the Jewish people have had that going right back to when they escaped Egypt. You know, so, I mean, you got to give them credit that they're still standing. There's a lot of other empires that have crumbled. And everyone goes, oh, you're a Zionist. You're like, no, I'm actually an Aussie, and I want to build an Australian country that we can all be proud of, that has my values and my heritage, which is Anglo-Saxon. And people can share that heritage. So I don't want to build a Jewish state in Australia. I want to build an Aussie state in Australia. And they're quite two different things. But I can actually respect and be sympathetic to their cause. Does that mean every Jewish person I've come across is a good person? No, because I've come across a few arsehole Jewish persons. There's arseholes in every community. But I'll give you an example. I have got a person I considered a good Islamic friend, and I've got a person who was definitely a really good Jewish friend. Two of them, actually. One took me in when I was homeless. I followed the guidance of the New Testament, of Jesus' teaching. And none of my Christian mates did, but the Jewish friend did. And they put me up when they found out I was living out of the back of the car, and they insisted. I didn't want to do it, but they insisted. They said, Bob, we're not letting you live out of the car, and if you don't do that, we're pulling our son out of the bar. So they forced my hand. So anyway, I stayed with them for 6 weeks. It was great 6 weeks. Got on really well. Good people, good, decent people. But the two Jewish friends, because you have compulsory service for the IDF, both served in the IDF. So according to plenty of people in Australia, well, they're war criminals. Bullshit. Furthest thing from it. But you don't understand the levels of hatred they have to deal with. They're not in the Middle East. They don't see each other, many of them, as human beings. They see each other as the devil, as sworn enemies, and they're raised with it. They have this hatred that's instilled with them from birth right through their lives. Now, there's a lot more forgiveness on the Jewish side than the Islamic side. Go meet a few, talk to them about it, right? But I had one, my Islamic friend talked about and said, well, they both said nearly exactly the same thing. My Islamic friend, because I saw this documentary series, it was really good. This Israeli guy got Arab kids and Islamic kids to stay together for a week. By the end of the week, they were good mates. They went back a month later after they'd gone back to their natural environments, and they all hated each other again. And at the end of the film, they showed a maternity ward that had an Arab baby coming into the world and an Israeli baby coming into the world, and how they start off side by side, but they're going to go into their environments and learn to hate each other. It was a really strong message. And I shared that with my Islamic friend because I wanted to see what they'd think. And his attitude, well, they just should have killed the Israeli baby at birth and saved a lot of people trouble. I talked to my Jewish mate about it, who served in the IDF. He was actually in the IDF forces that invaded Lebanon in 1982. And he said, well, they should have killed the Arab baby and saved a lot of people. Basically, identical messages. They both want to kill each other. So we have no idea what they're going through over there. We just can't relate to it. My brain still can't. How you can have that much hatred for another human being. I can't stand hatred towards animals. I can't stand people who hate. I had that last night on my podcast where they shot that beautiful Brumby horse, and they shot it because it was apparently harming the environment. Humans do more damage to the environment than any animal ever could. But anyway, and I'm no greenie, by the way. So, we just don't understand where they're going. So I do have a lot of empathy for the Jewish community. I don't have as much empathy for the Islamic community, and I'll tell you why. We've had the Jewish community right through our history, and they've never gone around to terrorize and set off bombs and killed innocent people, where you've got list after list after list of the Islamic faith encouraging exactly that. So one will actually live peacefully side by side with us, the other one not so. So, that's basically what it boils down to for me. And, the Jewish community overwhelmingly will live within our system and work within it, whereas the Islamic one don't want to, not the radical ones. And again, you've always got to put that radical part in front of it. I mean, I had a mate talk to me, should we ban Islam from Australia? I can see the for and against arguments for sure. Maybe it's a debate we need to have on this platform. But if I was going to have that debate, I would want a person to speak up for the Islamic faith, and I don't have anyone for that. I've got some people for the immigrant thing. I've got a Jewish person. I've got a groyper, the big Jew group. I don't have a Muslim. If there's any Muslims out there, I'd love to have you on for a conversation. So it'd be interesting to get you in. But anyway, I'm digressing a bit. But the reason I bring all that up is Julie Grant now, because of anti-Semitism being brought up, they want to give her stronger powers to deal with it. Now, all of this is bullshit, all right? It's got nothing to do with anti-Semitism. They're cloaking it with anti-Semitism so they can have a more dystopian state where they can monitor, because what they're going to push for a digital ID. That's where it's all going. That's where it was always going. So, and they're going to put the fear of God into people so the general population will go, well, we've got no other choice. Now, this is where I do lay the blame a lot at the feet of the Jewish leadership in this country. Mark Dreyfus, for example, a Jew who is part of a Labor Party that recognised Palestine. He signed some deals with the Greens who are totally anti-Semitic. Josh Burns is in the same boat, another Jew. He's actually dating a girl that's against the Christian faith in Australia, trying to get the Lord's Prayer removed from our parliaments, all that sort of thing. So, like I said, not all Jews are good people. Most of them I've dealt with are, but I've had a few confrontations with a few arseholes. I'll put it this way, I've had a lot more confrontations with a lot of arseholes who claim to be Christians. So let's put it all into context. But forgetting all that, the Jewish leadership played a big part in having this Royal Commission being all about anti-Semitism. That was a major mistake, major mistake. This Royal Commission should have all been about radical Islam. And the Jewish community had a chance to force the Albanese government to do exactly that. Instead, they go, no, we've got to make it about us. It's got to be about anti-Semitism. No, because if you'd made it about radical Islam, you would have brought the focus on one of the biggest ideologies that want to take down the Jewish faith, the Jewish community, and the Jewish people. Instead, you've navel-gazed. You've made it all about yourself and the Jewish community. Now, I understand why you're doing that, but it was a stupid move. And the problem is you're not going to counter anti-Semitism. You're going to make it grow. And I'll tell you why you're going to make it grow is because this whole Royal Commission is going to turn the barrels off radical Islam and they're going to turn it towards the wider Australian community and say, look at all those racists out there. Look at all the One Nation supporters. Look at the bigots. Look at the Nazis. They're all anti-Semitic. And they're going to take it off radical Islam. And you can see them doing it already, because they've already had one Jew bizarrely start preaching about the negative impact this is having on the Islamic community through Islamophobia. It's bizarre. I mean, it was 2 Islamic arseholes that shot those people. This should be all about radical Islam and how many of their cells are within Australia and where that next attack is coming from. Because I just about guarantee you there will be another attack, and we'll be going through this whole bullshit process again. But they want to censor us from being able to talk about it. And I think they're trying to fireproof that next attack. If they can censor what we put onto these social media platforms, and what Julia Inman Grant was talking about, these ratios. So if Albo puts on something and all the cowardly politicians now put no comments, everyone gets on there and they tell him what a dickhead he is. You know, he gets ratioed. So they want now the social media platforms to put in practices that will stop that happening. And what are they using that for? What are they using? What's the argument they're using to justify that for? Anti-Semitism. How convenient. You know, Albo got rightly ratioed because he didn't do enough after that attack, because he was worried about the impact of votes through Islamic communities. So he didn't want that to be about radical Islam. And the Jewish community gave him the perfect out. They made it about anti-Semitism. Biggest mistake ever. This is not going to, this Royal Commission is a total farce. It's not going to address anything. It's just a platform for Jewish people to go in there and say, poor me, we're the victims again. It's not going to solve the problem. All it's going to do is have people say, see, that's all they are. They just bitch about themselves. It's all about them. It's all about them. That plays right into the hands of everyone who wants to attack the Jewish community. And yet it was the Jewish leadership that set this, you know, they forced Albo to go this way. And Albo said, you beauty. I don't have to make this about radical Islam. I can make this about anti-Semitism. And we can exclude radical Islam. And worse, we can actually manipulate this Royal Commission so it not only looks at anti-Semitism, it looks at Islamophobia. It's like yesterday, Julia Gillard coming out and saying, well, she did the changes to the Sex Discrimination Act, not realising the impacts it would have through the trans community. She's trying to backtrack away from it. Her current ALP colleagues now trying to fix that amendment, so we're not going to have that impact? No. They're going to ignore their former golden child PM, and they're going to keep it as it is. I mean, politicians, the hypocrisy from them it's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. It really is. It's I shake my head. I shake my head at different times. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what I should have a notepad. I don't like podcasters who write the notes, or even the interviewers in mainstream media do it. Try and do it all off the top of my head. I think it comes up across as more organic, more natural. So sometimes it means I do a Trump, and what's he call it when he strays off? There's a name he gives for it. I can't remember. What was it? Was it about small business? I think it was about small business. I was talking about small business, taxes. There was a really good, I should say, there was a really good guy, a podcaster. He was interviewing a female socialist. Talk about dangers to our societies. Female socialist. You know, she's got the blue, blonde, rinsed hair, and she's on there, and she was trying to argue for socialism, and she was as dumb as dog shit. This guy was just asking her straightforward questions, and she could not ask him. These kids going through university are so indoctrinated. They don't learn anything about the ideology. All they do is learn talking points. They can't hold their own in an argument. They're just horrendous. I'm trying to remember. I've got a funny feeling that's it. My other subject for today, Tucker Carlson. Got to get in a Tucker because he's just the biggest hypocrite on the planet. I can't wait I don't know where Ben from Australia Talk is on this, and I love putting it to Ben because he talks on behalf of the group, a movement. I'm not too sure where the group of movement stands with Tucker Carlson. They love Thomas Massey. Don't know why. He's a dickhead. But Thomas Massey is certainly in the Tucker Carlson circles. So for months now, since Charlie Kirk got murdered, Tucker Carlson has tried to take on board, the Christian mantle, the Christian evangelism that Charlie Kirk did. But Charlie Kirk knew the Bible back to front. He could quote you passages, and Tucker can't do any of that. And then Tucker I saw an interview with Tucker, and, he will try, he'll have his little verse written, or you'll find passage out of the Bible and sitting there. I mean, Charlie Kirk had that memorized, and that's when you're up against someone who's really a biblical sort of scholar, evangelist, knows their shit, when they're just starting quoting passages. And I can't do that. I don't want to do that. But Carlson tries to portray him across himself like that. But then there was an interview, and this is the hypocrite that Carlson is. He's like Elbow. He admitted in an interview he doesn't go to church. I'm going, hold on. How can you be a Christian? I mean, you can't. I don't care whether you're a Protestant or you're a Catholic or whatever. If you're a Christian, and look, I don't always go to church, but I recognize that as a failure of my faith. This is where anybody who's watched me for any length of time knows I continually say I'm a poor Christian. And one of the reasons I'm a poor Christian is I don't go to church anywhere near as much as I should. Last Sunday, for example, I was going to go to church at 5, but the footy was too good. So I said I'll go tomorrow, and I didn't go. I'm one of those. I'm a bit of I'm a procrastinationist, and I put it off to the next day, but then I don't do it. And now here it is Friday. I'll get to Sunday, 5 o'clock mass usually I go to. I'll go this week because the footy's on Saturday night. God forgive me. Oh, Jesus would be really loving that I put my Tigers ahead of him, especially when my Tigers are crap. But anyway, I'm an Aussie, so hopefully he can forgive me that. I hope I've done as many positives as I've done bad, but at least I try. I do go to confession. I do go to church. I do receive Holy Communion. Now, I know a lot of my Protestant friends don't do that, but if you're a Protestant, go to church, acknowledge your faith, praise God, ask for his forgiveness. That's part of being a Christian. Listen to his teachings, listen to the passage of the Bible that the pastor or the priest might read out, figure out whether you agree or disagree with them. One of my favorite parts of Mass is going and listening to the readings and then trying to equate that to the sermon that the priest gives and going, well, yeah, I agree with that or I don't. I'm a grown adult. I can decide I'm only answerable to Jesus. I'm not answerable to the priest. So, most times I agree with the priest. There are times I disagree. But I respectfully just go through the Mass, get my communion and say my prayers and get on with my life. But that's an important part of being a Christian. So here's Tucker Carlson lecturing everybody through this supposed Christianity he's got when he's no Christian at all. And I'm going, you're no better than any other politician. So now, shock horror, Tucker Carlson starting his own party in America. Hope he does, because I think he'll fall flat in his face. But the only issue with that, if he splits the American vote, the Democrats get in. And the Democrats at the moment are leaning that far, not to socialism, but to flat-out communism, that if the Republicans do lose, the Democrats win. We're looking at a 4-year term for a potential president. Forget being having the Israel lobby pulling you by the chain. It'll be the communist lobby pulling the next president by the chain. Well, that'll be a lot of fun, especially if they get 2 terms. But there's enough idiots through the education system over there that have been indoctrinated like this blue rinsed bloody female. There's probably a chance they will get up. So we're living in testing times, some worrying times, at least here in Australia. Everyone likes to bag out poor old Australia, but we've got a movement that's starting to lean conservatively with Pauline and One Nation. Hopefully more and more people get behind that and we get our country back. So maybe we might be the canary in the coal mine for moving back to the right. Who knows? I've learned in my lifetime to never, ever get your hopes up, but just to keep mounting an argument and debate, which is what I do through this podcast. So hopefully there's enough people who've watched it. I haven't tested. I hope it's worked over. Anyway, I'm at the end of it. So if it hasn't, you've just had a talking head talking to you for no reason. So for me, here he comes. See, he always senses, Nelly. He's right there at my side again at the start, at the finish. He's getting his sense to when I'm winding up these days. Up he goes, back on his couch. He's probably come out to say, Dad, you've talked enough shit. Get off. So here I am signing off, everyone. God bless you. God bless your kids. God bless your grandkids. God bless your pets. God bless our flag. God bless our country. One nation or no nation. That's where we're going. All right. See everyone. Bye for now.